All right, fountain pen people, here we are back again. Another day for the Diamine Inkvent calendar 2024. Today is the 13th, and we'll pull that out. This is Diamine. It's very hard to read there. The pale pink with the silver writing on it. It says Lullaby, and that it is a standard ink. Well, let's get it out and see what it looks like. It's a very pale pink from the look on the label, but the label can be deceiving. So let's see what it looks like in a swatch. This is Kokuyo paper. Those of you who are familiar with the brand. Oh my gosh, that is very pale. Have to lay it on heavy for it to come up. That is a very pale, kind of a purplish pink. Interesting. And I've been kind of waiting for a standard ink like this one to bring up my the vintage pens that I've used or collected this year. And I'm not sure what order to do them in. I guess it doesn't really matter. This is a Schaefer Balance, very familiar to many of you. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of these were made. There are quite a few of them on the secondary market and collectors and all that stuff, and there's just a ton of them. But most of them don't function when you get them unless you've had somebody restore them. And they use two different filling mechanisms. They used the lever fill, and then they used this, what this one has, which is a vac filler, meaning that you unscrew the tail cap here, draw this back, and see, I had to open the cap because it needs to have air to flow in, and you draw it back, and this one's got a very large plunger sealer. I couldn't find the right size, so I put the size up on it. Anyway, it's kind of hard to see, but this isn't a solid black material. It's got lines in it of transparency that have ambered over the years. It was probably much clearer when it was first made. So that you could see the level of ink in the pen as you're writing with it, which is really cool and an advantage that these plunger fillers or vac fillers have over the lever fillers, because the lever fillers use a latex sac and you just can't see through them. Anyway, this one I put new seals and stuff in it, and I don't know if you can hear it when it pops. That kind of put sound. What happens is that as you push this down, it develops vacuum, and then it goes past a certain point, and the vacuum releases and draws ink into the barrel. And this one fills very completely for a vac filler. Good little pen. It came to me along with this one and this one. I don't know. I got a bunch of pens from somebody who was getting rid of some old vintage pens that needed work, and so I said sure, and if I remember correctly, this one also needed a new nib because the nib was cracked, and so I had another one on hand because there's so many of these Schaefer pens that are derelict where the vac filler unit went bad and somebody tried to fix it and the pen broke, which isn't always the repairer's fault. They just break sometimes. This is also a fairly ubiquitous pen from the time period. I think this one's 40s. This is the Wahl-Eversharp Skyline, and this one is in a brown material with a red striated cap. I don't know why that came loose. That's weird. The derby is in good shape, which is that brown part underneath the rollover type clip there. It's a very cool, iconic design. Art Nouveau-ish going into the 1940s. Anyway, I love these. They're very nicely balanced. The shape of them is very comfortable in the hand. They post deeply and well, and they're very secure. It's just a great user of a pen. Most of them have fairly stiff nibs, but there were some unusual flexible nibs and stuff that were available. Schaefer almost never had flexible nibs, or almost always hard as a nail. And then this one, I put a new sack in it, and it's good to go. And then here's another one that I acquired. This is a third tier pen. Don't know what brand it is because it's unmarked. You can see the body of the pen is this beautiful pale celluloid that's got some chatoyancy and a matte olive green with these lines of copper or gold running through it, which is kind of cool. I'm sure that that's just another celluloid material and not actually metal. The clip was rusted. It was nasty looking. All I did was polish it. It doesn't look too bad, but you can see that there's not a whole lot of that gold left on that steel clip. The cap band, which is very interesting because when I got it, it looked like tarnished copper. Um, and then I just polished it up and it looks okay too, and it kind of matches the clip. And then the lever here was also badly rusted, and I couldn't get it to look good, so I just coated it with just some gold paint, I think it was, just to keep it from rusting any further. I removed the rust and then coated it. But that's the lever, and the way it works, obviously, is that you pull the lever back, you put it down in the ink, and then release the lever, and it lets the sack open up. Because when you pull it up, it squashes the sack and then releases and draws the ink into it. But the interesting thing about this pen being a third-tier pen is it does have a warranted gold nib. And, warranted 14 karat. This got a little bit of flex to it, just a little bit of bounce. Not a lot. And that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is they assume that all vintage pens have flex, and that's just not the case. Another vintage pen that I acquired this year is this gorgeous Moore L96. This thing looks like it has never been used. It did have a little bit of ink residue in it, so I know that it did have ink in it at one point, but it looked like it was cleaned up and then put away and never touched again for 70 years or so. Again, a pen from the 20s or 30s with this gorgeous large Moore nib. It says on there Maniflex, which was kind of a marketing thing of theirs, where it was a stiff nib that if you needed to and you pressed down hard, you could get a little bit of flex out of it. It seems like kind of a marketing gimmick. Some of these are softer than others, but this one's fairly rigid. But it's large. It's a nice big nib, and it has a beautiful, form factor. I put the biggest sack in it I could find, and it still wasn't quite big enough. And you can hear the J bar on there rattling just a tiny bit. Beautiful, beautiful pen. And then last but not least is this set that I got, and I've always wanted a Waterman 100-year pen in the original lucite, which they only used for the first 2 years of production. This one I believe is a second-year production, because this is the lady size pen, which is quite petite, but it is made out of that clear green lucite, which, is the same material that they made the Parker 51s out of. A very durable, very strong material, but it was also under high demand during World War II. And so Waterman stopped making them out of lucite and switched over to celluloid, much to everyone's chagrin, I suppose, because these so-called 100-year pens that were supposed to last such a long period of time, the celluloid in them just kind of destroyed itself, and has been like a terrible mess. If you find them out of celluloid, they all need some serious repair work, or just the body's thrown away on them. And here, I'll show you one of them. Hold on one second. So now this one isn't a good comparison, or show and tell sort of. This is the 100-year pen. It's got the same sort of form factor here. It is larger, obviously. This is brown celluloid, and what you can't see is this part that is missing from the top here. It had a clear, almost amber celluloid bit on each end. This is not celluloid, but that's where the clip was held on. And what happens is that over time, the celluloid in these pens, particularly at the ends, starts to rot. And when it does, it off-gases and it destroys metals. It makes them corrode very badly. And it can spread to other pens, which is unfortunate. So this one kind of sits by itself, but I did cut off the rotting parts, and on this one I milled this little acrylic bit and glued it on the back to try and approximate what these things looked like when they were new, and I just haven't gotten around to doing the top. But when I do, this will be a fantastic pen, because look at that nib. That is just a huge nib. Great big thing. Fairly rigid, a little bit of bounce, but it's an italic, which is fantastic. Anyway, The originals of these, the first year of production, I think had rounded ends, and then some that were also like these, which were kind of flattened. Anyway, a full size one of these is still a Grail pen for me, but this is such a neat little pen. And these it's a lever filler. It would normally have a dark sack in there, but I replaced it with a silicone sack, and you can kind of see that it's kind of translucent inside, so that when you pull up the lever, you can actually see the bar go down. And I just don't know how well you're going to be able to see that. I mean, I can see it fairly well, but anyway, it squashes that sack. You put it in the ink, you release it, and it draws ink up into the sack when you do that. The thing about the silicone sack, besides being clear and being able to see the ink in it, is that it won't off-gas and cause any harm to any other parts of the pen, which they did with the celluloid pens. I'm not so worried about the barrel, but this section is made out of ebonite, and it may discolor with time, and it already has. You can kind of see that. Anyway, I like vintage pens. One of the things you have to worry about with vintage pens is that you don't normally want to use like a shimmering ink or something in them, because even though they may write okay with them, they use these sacks to fill, and it would be really hard to clean all that shimmer out, particularly if it were to clog. And these vac fillers are probably even harder to clean out than the sacks. So I just don't use shimmer inks in them, and I even try to avoid inks that have a lot of concentration of the ink, or saturation, as we call it. Sorry. So this is a very pale ink, and I am assuming it's going to be very safe. I'm not sure which pen to fill. All of these work. Maybe what we'll do is see if this giant honker will fit in there. Oh, it does. Well, we're going to use the Moore pen, and we're going to do our writing sample with the Moore pen. I've got the lever out. I'll let it draw up some ink. All right. This thing has a fairly large sack in it, so if I do fill it completely, it would be a rather large amount of ink. It's just such a beautiful pen. You shouldn't shy away from vintage pens. There is a learning curve with them, and if you want to, if you want them to work well, you have to, embrace the age of them and get used to repairs or get to know a good pen repair person. Anyway, so this is a Moore L96, and I don't know if this is the largest pen they made, but it is definitely a large pen. It has, I don't know, what I would call it a fine Maniflex nib. And like I said, Mana refers to manifold, which would be a very hard nib, and you can write into carbon paper with it. Flex obviously means that it has some line variation, and if you push it really hard, it will do it. And these are pretty robust nibs, so they can take that kind of pressure. Nice ebonite feed on that, and you can get some good line variation. The ink is Diamine's Lullaby. It's writing very well. It's a great pen from the Inkvent for 2024 for December 13th. Beautiful pen. So glad I got it. Thank you, Cindy Smith. I was able to repair it and start using it. There's a little ink on the section that I didn't wipe off when I filled it that I just got on my finger, but that's all right. Nothing more to say here other than enjoy your pens and enjoy this Inkvent. It's been a good year. Thank you.